I had never felt smaller than the day I entered the Galactic Council nexus. The station stretched across space like a metal continent, its towering chamber filled with representatives from hundreds of civilizations. Some had ruled the stars for tens of thousands of years. Humanity had been part of the coalition for barely 2 decades. We were tolerated, not respected. The emergency session began as holograms revealed shattered frontier colonies. Entire settlements had vanished after mysterious attacks. Cities lay in ruins, but there were no bodies, no wreckage from battle, and no signs of an occupying force. The silence in the chamber became heavier with every image. Then an urgent distress signal interrupted the meeting. Black Ridge, Iron Hollow. They everywhere. Don't go underground. The transmission ended in static. Orbital scans appeared only moments later. The colony was devastated, yet every life form had simply disappeared. Murmurs spread through the delegates as fear replaced confidence. The speaker announced that a joint expedition would investigate. When the Kaelor delegation entered the chamber, every conversation stopped. Even the oldest empires feared the legendary Deathworld warriors. I watched them in silence, wondering what kind of enemy could frighten those whom the galaxy believed feared nothing. The council chamber remained silent long after the final burst of static faded from the speakers. No delegate hurried to speak. Every civilization represented there had faced pirates, plagues, rogue machines, and hostile empires, yet none of those threats resembled what we had just witnessed. Entire colonies did not simply vanish. They left wreckage, casualties, or evidence of conquest. Black Ridge had left only questions. The speaker ordered the orbital survey expanded. A detailed hologram of Iron Hollow rotated above the chamber, revealing twisted buildings, collapsed mining tunnels, and long trails carved into the ground as though something unimaginably heavy had crossed the settlement. My eyes followed the marks until they disappeared beneath a mountain range. The geological scans showed hundreds of natural caverns stretching deep below the planet's surface. Life signs? A delegate asked. The technician lowered his head. None detected. A ripple of unease spread through the chamber. Another officer stepped forward with additional data. No energy weapons were discharged. No orbital bombardment occurred. Defensive batteries never fired. There are no recorded fleet signatures within the system during the incident. That made no sense. A colony of nearly 80,000 people had disappeared without a battle. One of the elder delegates rose slowly. Only a civilization possessing technology far beyond our own could accomplish such a feat. Several representatives immediately agreed. Others began demanding military action before this mysterious enemy could strike again. Fleet numbers, mobilization routes, and planetary defenses appeared across the chamber as fear quickly transformed into preparation for war. I looked toward the Kaelor delegation. Commander Kara Voss remained perfectly still. She studied the hologram without a single change in expression, her golden eyes fixed on the enormous tracts surrounding Black Ridge. Unlike the others, she did not seem interested in discussing fleets or bombardments. She was studying the evidence. For the first time since arriving, she finally spoke. Those are footprints. The chamber fell silent once more. Every delegate turned toward the towering Kaelor commander. If something made tracks that large, she continued calmly, then whatever happened on Iron Hollow is still waiting for us. The debate erupted almost immediately. Ancient rivals who had spent centuries negotiating borders suddenly agreed on one thing. Whatever had happened on Iron Hollow had to be destroyed before it spread. Fleet admirals argued for overwhelming force, insisting that hesitation would only give the unknown enemy time to prepare. Others demanded quarantine zones around every frontier system. Fear was beginning to replace reason. I remained silent, watching Ambassador Evelyn Hayes read every report twice before saying a single word. She never rushed to fill silence, a habit that often made other delegates underestimate her. They mistook patience for uncertainty. The speaker finally turned toward Earth's delegation. Ambassador Hayes, humanity has remained unusually quiet. Does your government have a recommendation? Hundreds of eyes shifted toward us. Hayes stood with calm confidence, smoothing the sleeve of her dark uniform before addressing the chamber. "We do." Her voice was steady, neither loud nor defensive. "Before declaring war, we should first understand what actually happened." The chamber grew noticeably colder. She continued without hesitation. "Everything we've seen points to a conclusion, but none of it is evidence. We have no confirmed enemy, no demands, no survivors to interview, and no proof that this was an act of aggression. We are preparing to fight an opponent we cannot even identify." Several delegates exchanged disapproving glances. Hayes ignored them. "I propose a joint reconnaissance mission composed of military personnel, scientists, engineers, and medical teams. We investigate first. If we discover a hostile force, we respond with the full strength of the coalition. But we should not begin a war based on assumptions." For several long seconds, no one answered. Then quiet laughter echoed through the chamber. A veteran delegate shook his head. "The youngest species in the coalition believes caution is wisdom." Another added, "Or perhaps fear." I watched the reactions spread across the room. Most saw diplomacy as weakness. Only one delegate did not laugh. Commander Kara Voss remained motionless, studying Ambassador Hayes with an expression I could not read. For the briefest moment, our eyes met. Something told me the Kaelor commander was not judging humanity's caution. She was judging everyone else's certainty. The laughter rolled through the chamber in waves. Delegates whispered to one another, amused that the newest member of the coalition believed an unknown force deserved investigation instead of immediate destruction. I kept my expression neutral, though every instinct told me that fear was making experienced leaders careless. Panic had a way of sounding like certainty. A towering delegate from the Varick Dominion struck the floor with the end of his staff. "Every hour we delay gives this enemy more time to grow stronger. Frontier colonies have vanished. What greater proof do you require?" Ambassador Hayes answered without raising her voice. "Evidence." The single word echoed through the chamber. "If we attack without understanding the situation, we may create the very war we hope to prevent. History is filled with civilizations that mistook fear for wisdom." Several representatives openly scoffed. "The humans speak like philosophers," one muttered. "Or pacifists," another replied. Only Commander Kara Voss remained silent. Her gaze never left the rotating image of Iron Hollow. I noticed her studying the enormous footprints instead of the ruined buildings. She seemed interested in what everyone else ignored. The speaker finally raised both hands for order. "The council must decide." Voting panels illuminated across the chamber. One proposal authorized an immediate military strike against Iron Hollow. The second approved a reconnaissance mission before any hostile action. Lights flashed as each civilization cast its decision. The result appeared moments later. Reconnaissance had passed, only by 6 votes. Several delegates protested immediately, demanding the decision be reconsidered. The speaker refused. "The expedition departs within 12 hours. A new hologram listed the participating personnel: scientists, engineers, security forces, medical specialists, Kaelor shock troops. Then another name appeared: Coalition Logistics Officer Ryan Foster, Human Expeditionary Corps. I had never heard of him. Judging by the puzzled look on Ambassador Hayes' face, neither had she. Yet she smiled faintly. "Let's hope," she whispered, almost to herself. "He's exactly where he needs to be." I had no idea then that one ordinary logistics officer was about to change the course of galactic history. The emergency meeting ended without celebration. Delegates dispersed in tense silence, each preparing their own contingencies in case the reconnaissance mission failed. Across the chamber, military officers argued over landing formations and extraction routes, while scientists requested additional survey drones and geological scanners. Everyone expected resistance. No one expected answers. I remained beside Ambassador Hayes as the official expedition roster continued to scroll across the central display. The coalition had assembled an impressive force. Kaelor assault teams would provide security. Xenobiologists would examine any unknown organisms. Engineers would assess the ruined colony. Medical specialists stood ready to assist survivors, if any could still be found. Then one final assignment appeared. Coalition Logistics Officer, Ryan Foster. Several delegates frowned. A logistics officer? Even I questioned the choice. This mission sounded like one for soldiers and scientists, not someone responsible for cargo manifests, supply chains, and transportation schedules. Hayes noticed my confusion. Never underestimate logistics, she said quietly. Wars are won by people who make certain everyone else has what they need. Before I could respond, the Kaelor delegation crossed the chamber. Commander Kara Voss stopped briefly beside our platform. Up close, she was even more imposing, her scarred armor marked with symbols earned through decades of combat. She regarded Ambassador Hayes with unreadable eyes. Your representative, she said, recommended caution. He did, Hayes replied. It is an unusual strategy. So is surviving. For the first time, I thought I saw the faintest hint of approval in Kara's expression. Perhaps, she answered. Without another word, she turned and walked away. 12 hours later, the coalition cruiser Nova Frontier departed the Nexus with the expedition aboard. Somewhere inside that enormous vessel, Ryan Foster was preparing for a mission he likely believed would be routine. He could not have known that the galaxy's most feared warriors would soon be relying on his judgment. Nor could he have guessed that his very first meeting with Commander Kara Voss would begin with a single misplaced word, one that would leave an entire squad of legendary Kaelor warriors standing in stunned silence. I first saw Ryan Foster in the main logistics bay of the Nova Frontier, standing on top of a cargo crate with a tablet in one hand and a mug of coffee in the other. Nothing about him matched the image I had formed after hearing his assignment. He looked more like an overworked quartermaster than someone about to join the most dangerous mission in recent coalition history. Around him, technicians hurried to secure vehicles, medical supplies, drones, and emergency shelters for the landing on Iron Hollow. Ryan moved calmly through the organized chaos, checking every container personally before approving its placement. Medical equipment stays closest to the shuttle ramps, he called. If we find survivors, seconds will matter. No one argued. A sudden silence spread across the bay. I turned toward the entrance. Commander Kara Voss had arrived with 6 Kaelor veterans, each carrying enough equipment to outfit an entire human squad. Their heavy boots echoed across the deck, and every nearby conversation stopped. Ryan glanced up from his tablet. For a brief moment, neither side spoke. Then he smiled politely. "Morning, sweetheart." The words escaped so naturally that I doubted he realized what he had said. The effect was immediate. Every Kaelor froze. One soldier slowly turned his head toward Ryan as though he had misheard him. Another tightened his grip on his rifle without saying a word. Even the engineers stopped working, sensing that something extraordinary had just happened. Commander Kara stared at Ryan with unreadable golden eyes. The silence stretched so long that I could hear the ventilation fans. Ryan blinked. Did I say something wrong? A human technician buried his face in both hands. Finally, Kara spoke. Did you just call me sweetheart? Ryan looked genuinely confused before understanding dawned across his face. Oh, he scratched the back of his neck. Sorry, habit. No fear, no panic, just honest embarrassment. For several seconds, Kara continued studying him. Then, to everyone's astonishment, she gave the smallest nod. I have been called many things, she said evenly. That is a first. The entire bay exhaled at once, and work slowly resumed, though every witness knew they had just seen something no Kaelor warrior would ever believe without seeing it themselves. The awkward silence faded, but the atmosphere inside the logistics bay had changed. The Kaelor warriors no longer looked at Ryan Foster with amusement. They watched him with cautious curiosity. Any other junior officer would have apologized repeatedly after addressing a Kaelor commander so casually. Ryan had simply admitted his mistake and returned to work. He gathered the expedition leaders around a holographic table as Iron Hollow slowly rotated above its surface. Before we land, Ryan began. Everyone needs to understand our priorities. One of the Kaelor captains crossed his arms. I assume the first priority is eliminating the threat. Ryan shook his head. No. Several brows lifted. Our first priority is identifying the threat. He enlarged the colony map, highlighting the destroyed residential district, the mining complex, and the underground tunnel network. Second priority, he continued, is locating survivors. Every medical unit stays close to the advanced teams. Engineers secure damaged structures. Scientists collect evidence before anyone starts blowing holes in the landscape. One Kaelor officer gave a low growl. And if something attacks us? Ryan answered immediately. Then we defend ourselves. The officer frowned. You do not strike first? Not unless we confirm hostile intent. Murmurs spread around the room. To most coalition militaries, waiting to be attacked sounded dangerously naive. Unknown enemies were supposed to be destroyed before they became stronger. Ryan calmly ignored the reactions. They reviewed every sensor log from Black Ridge. None of them prove anyone launched an attack. They prove something happened. Those the same thing. He looked around the table until every officer met his eyes. I don't intend to start a war because we guessed wrong. The room fell quiet. Commander Karavos studied the holographic map for several moments before speaking. If your assumptions are mistaken. Ryan nodded. We adapt. And if your caution costs lives? It won, he replied. Because everyone here is trained to respond the moment a genuine threat appears. The Kaelor commander remained silent. Finally, she reached toward the console and approved the operational plan. I disagree with much of it, she admitted. But discipline means following the mission. She looked directly at Ryan. You will have your chance, human. Ryan smiled. That's all I asked for. For the first time since leaving the Council Nexus, the expedition had a single plan, and whether the others realized it or not, they were now following a human lead. The landing shuttles descended through Iron Hollow's thick gray clouds, their hulls rattling as powerful crosswinds slammed against them. I stood behind the cockpit, watching the colony emerge through breaks in the storm. Black Ridge looked less like a settlement and more like the remains of an ancient battlefield. Smoke still drifted from shattered buildings, and the mining towers leaned at impossible angles as if something unimaginably strong had pushed them aside. 30 seconds, the pilot announced. Ryan checked the final status display. No one fires unless I give the order or you, defending a life. We observe first. Several Kaelor soldiers exchanged doubtful glances, but Commander Karavos answered before anyone else could. You heard him. The shuttle touched down with a heavy thud. The ramp lowered slowly. Cold air rushed inside. Silence greeted us. Not the peaceful silence of an empty world, but the unsettling absence of birds, machinery, voices, or even insects. It was as though the entire planet was holding its breath. The expedition spread into formation. Engineers moved toward the damaged generators while medical teams searched collapsed homes. Scientists activated portable scanners, recording every detail of the devastation. Then one of the Kaelor scouts stopped abruptly. Commander. Everyone gathered beside him. Pressed deep into the soil was a footprint nearly 3 meters long. Another lay several meters ahead. Then another. A trail of enormous tracks circled the colony before disappearing toward the nearby mountains. No known coalition species is that large, one scientist whispered. Ryan knelt beside the print instead of reaching for his weapon. The edges are sharp, he observed. These were made recently. Suddenly another scout called from a nearby building. Writing. We hurried over. Every surviving wall carried the same message, carved with incredible precision into metal and stone. Do not dig deeper. The warning appeared again, and again, in 6 different languages. A chill ran through me. Whoever had written those words had wanted to make absolutely certain they would be understood. At that exact moment every scanner on the expedition failed. Displays flickered. Signals vanished. The communications network dissolved into static. Somewhere beyond the ruined streets, hidden within drifting shadows, something enormous moved. It wasn't attacking. It was watching us. Every rifle rose at once. Kaelor warriors formed a defensive ring around the expedition while the scientists struggled to restart their scanners. The devices flickered helplessly before dying again, their displays filled with meaningless symbols. Whatever interfered with our equipment surrounded us completely. Ryan refused to panic. Visual search only, he ordered. Stay together. Check every structure. Commander Kara nodded. Move. We advanced deeper into the ruined colony, stepping carefully between collapsed buildings and abandoned mining equipment. Doors hung open. Meals still rested on tables, and personal belongings lay scattered across the streets. It looked as though thousands of people had vanished in the middle of ordinary life. Then someone shouted, "Movement!" Every weapon swung toward a collapsed warehouse. A terrified woman stumbled into the street, followed by 3 children and several exhausted miners. Their clothes were torn, but none showed signs of injury. "They alive!" I exclaimed. Medical teams rushed forward while Kaelor soldiers secured the area. Ryan knelt beside the oldest miner. "I am Ryan Foster, Coalition Expedition. You safe now?" The miner stared at him in disbelief. "No," he whispered. "You not safe." Ryan remained calm. "What happened here?" The survivors exchanged nervous glances before the woman finally answered. "It wasn't an invasion." Silence fell. "The giants never attacked us." Several Kaelor officers frowned. "Explain." The miner pointed toward the mountains. "We were expanding the mines. We broke into something ancient beneath the surface." His voice trembled. "Hours later they appeared." "The creatures?" He nodded. "They destroyed our drilling equipment. Not us." Another survivor continued. "They kept forcing us away from the tunnels. At first we thought they were hunting us, so people fought back." Her eyes filled with regret. "They never struck first." Ryan looked toward the enormous footprints disappearing into the mountains. What were they protecting? The answer came quietly. "The underground." The woman swallowed hard. They kept repeating the same warning. She pointed toward the carved message on the nearest wall. "Do not dig deeper." A deep rumble echoed beneath our feet. The ground vibrated for several seconds before becoming still again. Every survivor looked toward the mountains. One child whispered the words none of us wanted to hear. "They know we back." Somewhere beyond the broken colony, something impossibly large answered with a distant, echoing call that rolled across Iron Hollow like thunder rising from beneath the planet itself. The distant call faded into the mountains, leaving only the wind moving through the shattered remains of Black Ridge. No one spoke. Even the Kaelor warriors, famous for charging enemies without hesitation, waited for Commander Kara's signal. She lowered her rifle instead. Ryan looked at the frightened survivors. "Can they understand us?" The elderly miner nodded. "They understood every warning we shouted. They simply never answered." Ryan took a slow breath before activating the expedition's emergency transmitter. The signal struggled against the interference but finally reached orbit. "This is Foster. Cancel all combat preparations. We have no evidence of hostile intent." Static answered. Then the connection cleared just enough for the fleet commander to reply. "Negative. The Council has authorized planetary bombardment if contact is not established within 10 minutes. Several Kaelor officers cursed. Ryan glanced toward the mountains. "Then I need 5. Without waiting for permission, he stepped beyond the defensive perimeter and walked toward the massive footprints. Kara hesitated only a heartbeat before following him. The rest of us remained behind, watching 2 small figures disappear into the gray mist. Minutes passed. Then the ground trembled. A gigantic shape emerged from the fog, towering above the broken trees. Its body resembled living stone wrapped around glowing crystal veins, while ancient symbols covered its enormous limbs. Behind it came others, equally immense, their golden eyes fixed on the humans and Kaelor. None carried weapons. Ryan stopped a respectful distance away. "My name is Ryan Foster," he called. "We came to understand, not to conquer." For several silent seconds nothing happened. Then the largest guardian lowered its head. A deep voice echoed through the valley, not through the air but inside my mind. At last, someone asked before firing. The Guardian explained that its people had protected Iron Hollow for thousands of years. The miners had unknowingly broken the seals, imprisoning an ancient force beneath the planet's crust. The colonists had been moved away to safety while the Guardians repaired the damage. Ryan immediately reopened the orbital channel. "Stand down," he ordered. "The war ends before it begins." VidIQ. The order to stand down reached the Coalition fleet with barely seconds to spare. On the flagship, targeting officers had already completed firing solutions for a full orbital bombardment. Hundreds of warships held position above Iron Hollow, their weapons charged and awaiting only a final authorization code. Ryan's transmission froze every command console. "Abort all firing sequences," the fleet commander ordered. "Repeat, abort immediately." Across the bridge, crimson targeting displays faded to blue. No shot was fired. Within hours, every recording gathered by the expedition was transmitted to the Galactic Council Nexus. The emergency session reconvened before representatives from hundreds of civilizations. I stood once again behind Ambassador Hayes as the chamber watched the footage in complete silence. They saw the ruined colony. They saw the giant footprints surrounding Black Ridge. They watched Ryan refuse to fire despite overwhelming pressure. Then came the moment that changed everything. The recording showed the ancient Guardian lowering its massive head instead of attacking. Its voice echoed through the chamber. "We protected those who feared us. We waited for one who would ask instead of destroy." No delegate laughed now. The Guardians explained that the miners had unknowingly breached an ancient containment complex beneath Iron Hollow. Hidden far below the surface rested unstable energies capable of destroying the entire planet. They had evacuated the colonists by force because there had been no time to explain. Every damaged building had been cleared without deliberately taking a single life. The misunderstanding had nearly become a galactic war. One elderly counselor slowly rose from his seat. "We prepared to exterminate an entire civilization." Another finished the thought. "Because we never asked a single question." The chamber remained silent for several long moments. Finally, Commander Kara Voss stepped forward. Among the Kaelor, admitting error before witnesses was almost unheard of. Yet she spoke without hesitation. The human strategy prevented a war that would have claimed millions. She turned toward Ryan on the display. He saw evidence. We saw an enemy. For perhaps the first time in Coalition history, the galaxy's fiercest warriors publicly acknowledged that humanity's greatest strength was not superior weapons or greater courage. It was the discipline to seek understanding before reaching for war. The emergency session ended without applause. There were no triumphant speeches, no declarations of conquest, and no celebrations of military strength. The galaxy had come within moments of beginning its greatest war over a misunderstanding, and everyone present understood how close they had come to catastrophe. The speaker reconvened the council one final time. "The question before us," he announced, "is no longer how to defend Iron Hollow. It is how its future should be decided." Several powerful civilizations immediately proposed placing the planet under permanent coalition military control. Others argued that the ancient Guardians should rule it alone, free from further interference. A few suggested abandoning Iron Hollow entirely. Ambassador Hayes quietly requested the floor. "Earth has no claim to this world," she began. "Nor do we seek one." Curious murmurs spread through the chamber. The settlers built homes here. The Kaelor protected them. The Guardians preserved this planet for thousands of years. None of those histories should erase the others. She paused before delivering humanity's proposal. "We recommend establishing a shared colony." The holographic display changed, revealing plans prepared during the return journey. Human engineers would rebuild Black Ridge using technologies that respected the underground sanctuary. Kaelor security teams would assist in protecting both settlers and Guardians while new agreements were established. Scientists from every coalition member would study Iron Hollow together under the Guardians' supervision. ensuring no future excavation threatened the ancient containment complex. The proposal surprised everyone. Humanity had prevented the war. No one would have questioned if Earth had demanded exclusive rights to the planet. Instead, they refused them. The speaker looked toward Ryan Foster. As the expedition's senior human officer, do you wish to add anything? Ryan stood slowly. His answer lasted only a few seconds. The greatest victory, he said, is the one where everyone gets to go home. Silence filled the chamber. Then, one after another, delegates activated their voting panels. The proposal passed almost unanimously. Iron Hollow would become the first world jointly governed by settlers, the Kaelor and the Ancient Guardians. No conquerors, no defeated nations, only neighbors who had nearly become enemies because they had forgotten to ask a single question before reaching for war. 5 years passed before I returned to Iron Hollow. The planet no longer resembled the shattered world where our expedition had first landed. Black Ridge had been rebuilt into a thriving settlement where human architects, Kaelor engineers, and the Ancient Guardians had designed every structure together. Homes stood beside towering crystal formations left untouched by construction, while elevated transit routes crossed the valleys without disturbing the sacred ground beneath them. The old warning remained carved into stone at the colony's entrance. Do not dig deeper. No one ever removed it. Instead, children learned its meaning before they learned mathematics. The Guardians still watched over the mountains, but they no longer hid in the shadows. Their immense figures became familiar sights along the horizon, patiently observing the settlements they had once been forced to protect from a distance. Visitors soon discovered that the giants possessed remarkable knowledge of geology, ecology, and history. Research centers built beside their sanctuaries produced scientific breakthroughs shared across the coalition. The Kaelor maintained a permanent security detachment on Iron Hollow, though their role gradually shifted from soldiers to protectors. Warriors who had once expected battle now escorted scientists into the wilderness and helped colonists navigate the planet's dangerous terrain. Commander Kara Voss remained in command. She had changed little. Her armor still bore the scars of countless campaigns, and her expression remained as unreadable as ever. Yet those who knew her well noticed small differences. She smiled more often, mostly when Ryan Foster was nearby. Ryan never sought promotions or political recognition. He continued serving as logistics coordinator for the growing colony, insisting that keeping supplies moving was more important than receiving medals. One afternoon I watched the two of them inspect a newly completed research station. Ryan waved from across the courtyard. "Morning, Kara." She glanced toward him. For the briefest moment, the feared Kaelor commander allowed herself a rare smile. "Morning." She paused just long enough for everyone nearby to notice. "Sweetheart." Every Kaelor soldier within earshot froze. Ryan laughed. "So now you, redoing it on purpose?" "I believe," Kara replied with perfect composure, "I am honoring human tradition." Even the Ancient Guardians rumbled with what sounded remarkably like amusement, and Iron Hollow felt a little more like home for everyone who lived there. Many years later, I stood once more inside the Galactic Council Nexus as a Kaelor historian presented the official record of the Iron Hollow incident. The chamber remained silent while he closed the archive with words that would be studied for generations. "We believed humanity's greatest strength came from surviving a deathworld." He paused, looking toward Earth's delegation. Then one human called our deadliest warrior, sweetheart, and her entire squad fell silent. A ripple of quiet amusement crossed the chamber. We expected their greatest weapon to be their courage. It was not. We feared their armies. We should have feared their patience. He closed the record. Humanity's true power was never its ships, its soldiers, or its resolve. It was the extraordinary ability to turn fear into trust, and strangers into allies. No one argued. History already had.